Final Cut Pro editors don't have to work alone. It's easy to share libraries with other editors, but you need to know the secrets that are shown in this video. The advantage of collaboration is not just for major studios. Editors in any organization producing promotional material or social media videos can gain a real edge by putting their heads together. In this video, I'll introduce the secrets of sharing with other Final Cut Pro editors anywhere else in the world. My name is Bruce, and if we've met before, welcome back. Otherwise, please like and subscribe, and don't forget to press the bell to be reminded of other videos in the series as they are published. Originally, I planned this to be one video, but as I started to script it, I realized that the content was just too much for a video to be watched in one setting. So I've broken it up into a series of short videos. However, I'll combine all three into a video for those viewers who wish to keep the content for reference. All the videos have timestamps in the description below that will allow you to jump to the different chapter headings. And let me stress, this video was in no way sponsored or instigated by Lucidlink. The video is produced with the information that I personally gained during my evaluation of all the Final Cut Pro sharing options that I was able to find. But during my evaluation, when I needed assistance in understanding the workings of Lucidlink, their support staff were outstanding, and in no small way their willingness to help aided my decision to go with Lucidlink for my collaboration with other editors that I use in the US. Section 1 is about establishing a Lucidlink account and how to optimize Final Cut Pro to take best advantage of the Lucidlink cloud storage. Over the past 6 months, I've been evaluating various avenues of collaboration methods on behalf of an associated US company that I produce up to 40 promotional videos per week. The footage is filmed in the USA and I access it from the cloud and initiate projects into Final Cut Pro that are stored in the cloud so that editors in the US can make corrections or simply just change wording and titles directly in the library when it's in the cloud. The principle works well with the time zone difference, as I have access to the footage at the end of the day's filming in the US, which is early morning my time. And this gives me all day in my time to complete videos and then have them ready and waiting in the cloud for the morning after the shoot in the US. The library stays in the cloud so it can be accessed by any user from any location in the world. In the past, we've collaborated using Dropbox with a reasonable success, but with the downside that footage required for the edit needed to be downloaded from Dropbox to the local computer before I could start editing. And for 4K footage from high-end cameras, this could take over 24 hours to download to my computer before I could start editing. Not exactly useful for next day edits. The real advantage of Lucidlink is that as soon as you establish a Final Cut Pro library in the Lucidlink cloud account, you can start adding the media stored on Lucidlink into the Final Cut Pro library without having to wait for the media to download to the local computer, as you do with Dropbox. During the evaluation period, I looked at a number of different software and hardware options for collaboration using Final Cut Pro, and a number were more suitable for other video editing packages as they prioritized either Media Composer or Adobe Premiere. So without going into comparisons of what the other packages do, I picked Lucidlink for two reasons. It has a similar process to Dropbox, and that's from a workflow point of view, which saves on training our editors to learn new procedures. And most importantly, I found Lucidlink to be the quickest to move media over the internet, allowing me to get Final Cut Pro projects started without having to wait for the full download to my computer, as we did with Dropbox. As I said, this first section is about establishing a Lucidlink account and how to optimize Final Cut Pro to take best advantage of Lucidlink. It's very easy to start using Lucidlink with a trial 14-day period. Just install, create an account, initialize a file space, and create a Final Cut Pro library. And this is how it's set up. Lucidlink has a unique setup procedure. You'll need to establish a domain name. That sounds difficult, but not so. It's just a name that you enter into the appropriate field. And for this exercise, I've selected the name Video Tutors as my domain name. And you'll also be asked for a name for the file space. Again, it's quite simple. Just pick a name you like. In this example, I've selected Bruce, which means the file space will be bruce.videotutors. Then you'll need to choose your cloud storage region, pick something that's close to you, press the Next button, then Review and Confirm and Create button, and then you'll launch the desktop client. If you don't already have it, you'll need to download it at this stage. Once you've downloaded that, you can open that desktop app and then initialize the desktop app and open the folder. Once the file space is set up and connected, you'll become the root user and be able to administrate other users as either administrators or as standard users. An administrator has all the access privileges of the root user, whereas a standard user needs to be given access, or as Lucidlink calls it, be given permissions to access folders. And this is a bit of a trap. You need to give the standard user permission to be able to see any folder. If you don't give them permission, they'll see nothing. But there's more on that later in this video. In the right-hand side of your Mac's top menu bar, you'll see a twisted rope icon. And you'll also see in the Finder's Windows sidebar the name of your file space, Bruce in this case. Both will give you access to the Lucidlink folder in the cloud. And the icon at the top of your menu bar is the most useful. There are 3 tabs at the top left and a menu of 3 horizontal bars on the top right. The first tab from the left shows you information about your file space. And for now, let's concentrate on the Open Folder button. When you click that button, the Lucidlink folder in the cloud opens in a Finder window, which will be empty at this point. You'll need to create 2 folders now, and I'll get you to create more folders later. But as I said, let's keep things simple. One of the folders to add now will hold your Final Cut Pro libraries in the cloud, and the second will store the Final Cut Pro caches. And it's these caches that are the big part of Lucidlink's magic. I've called the folders Final Cut Pro Active Libraries and Lucid Cache. For now, I want to concentrate on how to optimize Final Cut Pro's settings or preferences so that the libraries will work best with Lucidlink. Next to do is to launch Final Cut Pro and create a new library and direct it to the Lucidlink file space in the cloud and store the new library in the Final Cut Pro Active Libraries folder. Later in this tutorial, you'll be able to add new folders for each user, but as I said, I want to keep it simple for now. Next, while the Final Cut Pro library is still selected in the browser's sidebar, open the inspector so you can see the storage options. And you can select the Modify Settings button to make changes from the defaults. You want to have the media stored in library, and motion content stored in the Motion Templates folder. And finally, you want to direct the cache into the Lucidlink folder. And you'll find that in the Finder window, it will be at the bottom of the sidebar. Select the Lucidlink folder, which is currently called Bruce. Congratulations, you can now start editing using Lucidlink default settings. The next section discusses how to change these defaults in the Lucidlink folder in the cloud. When you select the rope icon in the Mac's menu bar and select the 3rd tab from the left, you will open the control panel. First, let's look at the Settings category in the left sidebar. Any changes you make in the settings affects your computer only. It's got no effect on any other user in the Lucidlink file space. And there are two settings to do with cache that you may consider changing. And my suggestion is to leave all the others at the defaults. The cache location is where the media files are cached or temporarily stored on your computer. By default, it's set to your system disk. If you do change the device that the cache is stored on, make sure it's a fast SSD. The local cache size is the amount of cache that you let Lucidlink use on your computer. The bigger the space you give it, the more media can be stored locally on the computer to avoid internet lags. But there's no point in going silly about how much you allocate to Lucidlink. But do make sure that you've got the space to spare on your computer. The cache on your computer is useful if you need to pin files later to avoid internet lag. The next category is the global defaults. I don't suggest you make any changes here. The users category, however, is where you're going to spend most of your efforts. The advanced Lucid package allows for 5 users. And a user can either be an administrator or a standard user. An administrator has access to all folders. And the big thing to remember here is that the standard user has no access to any folders until they are given permission. Standard users can have permission to individual folders, or they can be added to a group that will give them access to all the folders that the group has access to. The first step is to add users by pressing the green plus in the user management window. Give them a username, nominate a temporary password, and select either standard or administrator, and then press the add user button. And you need to record that username and password to give to the new user so they can connect to Lucidlink. Once you've added the users, you can now give permission to the standard users. Administrators have access to everything, as I've said. Click the downward chevron to the right of permissions. The window that opens shows all the folders that they've been given permission to access. But to give them access to other folders, click the path line and all the folders will be displayed. First nominate whether they are to have read-only or read-write access, and then press the green plus button to add that permission to that user. If you want to add a user to a group, do the same as you did with permissions, but you'll need to add groups first from the Groups category in the sidebar. The Permissions category is an alternative way of adding permissions, as well as a place to view who has permission to what. Snapshots are Lucid speak for backups, and you have the choice of setting the snapshot backups from every minute to every year. In the Snapshot Management window, select the Snapshot Schedule, which opens the Schedule window, allowing you to press the green plus button to display the schedule. To name it, set a start time, the interval creation time, and finally the number of snapshots that are to be retained. The default snapshot schedule is probably more than you need. And be careful here. Because snapshots are included in that storage total, you should balance the snapshot schedule with the amount of storage that you've budgeted to pay for. This third section concentrates on the individual user, showing how to set up the local computer of each user rather than the cloud settings. You'll see how to set up the cache on the local disk for each user and how to pin libraries to improve laggy internet. Also, to use the folder structure that was set up in video 1. And finally, ensuring that Final Cut Pro libraries are not compromised by allowing only one user to have access to the library at any one time. Let's look at the individual user and how they will utilize Lucidlink. In section 2, you saw how to set up the cache size and the location from the Lucidlink control panel, selected with the rope icon in the Max menu bar. In the first section, you saw the 2 folders for libraries and cache that were set up in the main Lucidlink file space. Now I've added more folders to that file space to aid the collaboration process. And I'm assuming that you're the root user, so you will need to add these extra following folders to the main Lucidlink file space. There's no actual requirement by Lucidlink to have these folders though, or to use the folder names. This is just an example workflow for you to consider. Add the 3 main folders that you see here along with the internal folder structure, and I'll explain as we go. The first folder to consider contains the Final Cut Pro libraries. It's the Final Cut Active Libraries folder, and that contains a separate folder for each client. When you open a client folder, there's a folder named Available to Edit and also a folder for each user inside that original client folder. As you see here, the users folders are labeled by the user's name. Bruce is editing, Robert is editing, etc. Let me explain why you should have separate folders for each user. Final Cut Pro does not have any file locking facilities, which means it's possible for more than one editor to open up a Final Cut Pro library at the same time. Think disaster. If 2 editors make changes at the same time, which change has priority? So to avoid this confliction, it's imperative to allow only one editor to access a library at any one time. And the separate folder mechanism allows this protective workflow. If Bruce wants to work in a library, he moves the library from Available to Edit to his folder. So now the library is no longer available to other users. As you saw previous in section 2 of this video, each standard user is only given permission to view their own folder and the Available to Edit folder. The permission system ensures that the private folders are hidden from other users. And the effect is that the Final Cut Pro libraries can't be accessed while in another user's folder. When a user is no longer editing a library, they must return the library to the Available to Edit folder, or else the system breaks down. But don't fret. If, in an emergency, a user forgets or is unable to move a library from his folder to the Available Edit folder, an administrator can move the library because they've got access to all folders without needing permission. When I first showed you how to create your first Final Cut Pro library in Lucidlink, I asked you to direct the library to be saved in the then empty Final Cut Pro Active Libraries folder. Now that there are subfolders in that main library, drag your library to either the Available to Edit folder or to your folder with your name. The next folder to discuss is the Footage Uploads folder. As the name suggests, this folder is the destination for uploading media to Lucidlink. The Footage Uploads folder has subfolders titled with each user's name. While most of the media that you import into Final Cut will be sourced from the Footage Uploads folder, you could of course import media from anywhere else as well, your local computer or other online cloud facilities. Later in section 4 of this video, you'll see how to consolidate and prepare libraries for archiving. The next main folder, Information and Resources, is discretionary. And I've included in this folder a list of the Final Cut plugins that should be common to all users to have in their system. Also included are the nominated file naming conventions, if you've got one, to ensure that all users are on the same page as to file naming. And finally, in the information folder is a text file with instructions on how to use Lucidlink. And a tip, you could save a transcript of this YouTube video and add it to the information folder as a text file. The next suggested folder is there for you to export your completed videos to. Simply named Exports for Review, this folder allows other users to see an exported version of your projects so they can review them before they're uploaded to Vimeo or YouTube. And the final folder is also discretionary, For those who want to keep the Lucidlink monthly charges to a minimum, you should add this folder yourself and call it Archive Files. Since I've suggested that you direct all your media used in Final Cut Pro libraries to be in library, it's possible to remove the original media from the Footage Uploads folder. And because it's duplicated in the Uploads folder and the Final Cut Pro library, then it's taking up unnecessary space on Lucidlink that you're paying a monthly fee for. There's one more thing that I need to tell you about in this section. I've not mentioned much about the speed of your internet connection. And it goes without saying that the plan from your internet provider needs to be the fastest rate that you can afford. But even with the fastest plan, there'll still be times of high traffic or internet disruptions. There is a way to try and fix this though, by using the pin feature built into Lucidlink. This downloads and holds more cache on your local disk so that there's less need or reliance on the internet at any one time. In section 2, you nominated the size of the space for Lucidlink cache on your local computer. I mentioned that within reason, the larger the space, the better. And the pin feature takes advantage of that bigger space by locking or pinning a library of your choice in that cache on your local computer so that there's less demand on Lucidlink to stream files to you. You can pin a library or any file into your cache by locating the library in the Lucidlink Filespace folder and right-clicking on the file, then selecting Pin from the Quick Actions section in the pop-up menu. In the Lucidlink folder, you'll see a small pin in the Finder window. And when you've finished with the library and you don't need it pinned anymore, you can simply unpin with the same procedure that you used to pin it. Section 4. This fourth section will show you how to optimize the file size of Lucidlink to avoid high storage charges. You'll also see how to back up media from the Footage Uploads folder when the Final Cut Pro library has been consolidated, and you'll also see how to remove surplus files from Lucidlink. Links to the first, second and third videos are in the description below. Let's look at how to backup, archive and remove unnecessary files from Lucidlink. As explained earlier in this video, you're paying a monthly fee for the amounts of Lucidlink storage that you use. And from a practical point of view, you should keep the size of the storage as low as possible. The simplest way of doing this is to remove original media that's also stored in Final Cut Pro's library, as well as removing completed Final Cut Pro libraries that are ready to be archived. You'll most likely want to store the original media in finished libraries on local devices like spinning disks. After all, you don't need fast devices like SSDs, as these are archive files only required in an emergency. You've previously seen the suggested Lucidlink file space folder structure, including the Archive Files folder. Files are simply dragged into that archive folder. But before you do this, you need to consolidate Final Cut Pro libraries. And there are two simple processes that will ensure that all the original media is secure and that the library size is optimized to take up the least storage space. You need to consolidate and you need to delete render files. Launch Final Cut Pro and select the library in the browser sidebar. From the File menu, select Consolidate Library Media. And you should see No Files to Consolidate window. If not, select Consolidate Library Media again until you do see No Files to Consolidate. Finally, select the library in the sidebar again and select Delete Generated Files from the File menu. In the next window, select All Render Files and both Optimize and Proxy Media. Now all you need to do is to drag the library into the Archive Files folder. It's waiting in that folder to be dragged wherever you want to archive the files. I hope this video has helped you understand how to easily share libraries between different editors using Lucidlink. Watch out for a fifth video in this series that'll show you how to keep track of the edits and to keep a history of all the revisions that you've made. It's really important to be able to communicate between collaborators, and you'll soon find out that emails between editors will be extremely hard to keep track of. So the next video will show you a simple and free application to smooth the collaboration communications while keeping a history of who's edited what.